Introduction. Friends, if you want to watch the fun and exciting movie The Ugly Stepsister 2025 in English, then make sure to like this video. If you're visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss updates on the latest movies. In today's video, we're going to talk all about The Ugly Stepsister, what this movie is about, where you can watch it, and all the interesting and surprising facts surrounding it. I'm going to tell you which OTT platform or satellite channel will be showing this movie officially, so you can watch it easily. We will also cover the technical side of things, the music, the pre-production work, the filming process, post-production details, the movie's budget, and how much it has made at the box office so far. Plus, we'll explore the story of this film, and I'll give you a short review of the storyline so you know what to expect. On top of that, we'll discuss cool behind-the-scenes facts, the full storyline, the star cast, the actors' performances, and which character plays which role. That's why I invite you, friends, to stick with this video until the end. So let's get started. Plot and narrative. Alright, friends, let's dive into the wild and unpredictable world of The Ugly Stepsister 2025. From the very start, the film sweeps us into a reimagined fairy tale world, but forget what you know about Cinderella because this story flips the script. We begin not with the beautiful princess or the glass slipper, but with Clarabelle, the so-called ugly stepsister, who's anything but ordinary. The movie opens with a sharp, witty tone, pulling us into Clarabelle's point of view as she navigates a kingdom obsessed with appearances, shallow love stories, and royal gossip. Right away, you know you're in for a fresh ride because the story doesn't stick to the usual fairy tale formula. It jumps between Clarabelle's present-day misadventures and hilarious, often bittersweet flashbacks to her childhood, showing how she became the sarcastic, sharp-witted woman she is now. The big twist? Clarabelle isn't trying to sabotage Cinderella. She's trying to save her. Yep, you heard that right. As the story unfolds, we discover the kingdom is under threat from a powerful magic unleashed during the royal wedding, and Clarabelle, who everyone underestimates, becomes the unlikely hero. There are moments when the story shifts perspectives. Sometimes we see the action through Clarabelle's mischievous younger stepsister, sometimes through the charming but clueless prince, and occasionally even through the eyes of the castle servants who see all the behind-the-scenes chaos. This playful switching keeps the energy high and the laughs coming, while also building up tension as the magical threat grows larger. Key turning points come fast and sharp. First, there's the scene where Clarabelle realizes her stepmother has been dabbling in dark magic. A huge shock since everyone assumed she was just an uptight social climber. Then, there's the hilarious yet intense moment when Clarabelle and the prince are forced to team up, even though they can't stand each other, leading to some of the movie's funniest banter. And who could forget the emotional punch when Clarabelle confesses that all she ever wanted was to be seen for who she really is, not just dismissed as the ugly one. These turning points pull us deeper into Clarabelle's world and make us root for her even more. The narrative plays a lot with theme and tone, blending comedy, adventure, and moments of real emotional depth. The way the movie jumps in time, with memories bleeding into the present, gives it a dreamy, sometimes chaotic feeling, but it all comes together to show how the past shapes who Clarabelle is today. The emotional impact hits strongest when Clarabelle stands up not just for herself, but for the people around her, proving that she's more than the cruel nickname the world gave her. It's a fun, fast-paced, and unexpectedly heartfelt ride from start to finish, leaving you eager to see how this underdog rewrites her own fairy tale. Character development. Let's get into the juicy part. Friends, the characters. Because in The Ugly Stepsister 2025, the heart of the movie isn't just the magic or the twisty fairy tale setting. It's the characters and how they grow, clash, and surprise us. First up, Clarabelle, our so-called ugly stepsister, who is anything but one-dimensional. She starts off sharp-tongued, sarcastic, and bitter. Years of being labeled the unwanted, overlooked sister have left her with a tough outer shell. But as the movie unfolds, we get to see the layers peel back. Clarabelle isn't just the punchline or the villain. She's clever, loyal, and fiercely protective, especially of her younger sister. Her transformation is one of the best parts of the film. She goes from someone who hides behind snarky comments to someone who stands tall, takes charge, and dares to believe she might just be the hero of her own story. Then there's Cinderella, or Ella as she's called here, who also gets more depth than you'd expect. She's not just the graceful, perfect princess. She's a young woman overwhelmed by the pressure of royal life, torn between her love for the prince and her desire for freedom. The relationship between Clarabelle and Ella is one of the most entertaining and moving parts of the movie. They bicker, they misunderstand each other, but there's a real sisterly bond under all the tension. Watching them work through old resentments, admit past mistakes, and come together against a bigger threat adds a lot of emotional weight to the story. Now, let's talk about the prince. Oh, the prince. He's charming, yes, but also delightfully clueless, constantly tripping over his own royal ego. But as he's thrown into adventure alongside Clarabelle, he gets knocked off his pedestal and has to learn humility, teamwork, and, surprise, genuine friendship. By the end, you're laughing at how much he's grown from a polished royal figurehead to someone who actually listens, learns, and fights for what matters. Even the side characters shine. The wicked stepmother isn't just a cardboard villain. She has her own motivations, driven by fear of losing power and status. The castle servants, who start as comic relief, reveal unexpected bravery when the magical threat looms. And let's not forget the younger stepsister, who plays the role of mischief maker, but ends up being the glue that helps Clarabelle reconnect with her family. Each character, no matter how small, adds a spark to the story and helps shape Clarabelle's journey. You're not just watching a retelling of an old fairy tale. You're watching these characters wrestle with who they are, what they want, and how they fit into a world that's been telling them their roles since birth. And that's what makes it so fun and surprising to watch. Performances. All right, friends, let's talk about the performances in The Ugly Stepsister 2025. Because wow, this cast really knows how to light up the screen. First off, the actress playing Clarabelle is an absolute powerhouse. She takes what could have been a simple angry stepsister role and injects it with so much humor, vulnerability, and fiery spirit that you can't help but root for her. She delivers the sharp-witted lines with perfect comedic timing, but when the emotional moments hit, like when Clarabelle reveals the pain of years spent in her sister's shadow, she pulls you right into her world. Her performance is the heartbeat of the movie, and every scene she's in feels electric. Then we've got the actress playing Ella, Cinderella herself, and she does something really special here. Instead of playing the typical graceful, gentle princess, she brings a layered, very human energy to the role. She's stressed, conflicted, and sometimes a little bit rebellious, and the actress captures all that with a delicate balance of charm and raw honesty. The chemistry between Ella and Clarabelle is one of the movie's biggest strengths. Their arguments are snappy and hilarious, but their tender moments together remind you that this is ultimately a story about family. Now let's not forget the prince, played with a perfect mix of clueless charm and surprising heart. He starts off as the character you expect to roll your eyes at, all polished smiles and royal swagger, but the actor brings so much warmth and awkward sincerity that you end up loving him. His scenes with Clarabelle are some of the funniest in the movie, especially when they're forced to work together despite driving each other crazy. Watching his slow transformation from pampered royal to genuine ally adds a lot of charm to the film. The supporting cast deserves a big shout out too. The stepmother, played with icy precision, manages to be both menacing and strangely sympathetic. You can tell the actress enjoys walking that fine line between villain and tragic figure. The younger stepsister brings a lively, mischievous energy that adds lightness even in the film's darker moments. And the castle staff, while smaller roles, are played by actors who bring so much personality that they steal every scene they're in, whether they're gossiping behind the scenes or bravely stepping up when the kingdom is under threat. All in all, it's the combined strength of this ensemble that makes The Ugly Stepsister 2025 such a blast to watch. Every actor seems fully committed to their role, creating a world that feels rich, funny, emotional, and alive. You don't just watch these characters, you believe in them, you laugh with them, and you cheer for them, which is what makes the whole ride so entertaining. Direction. Let's dive into how the director works their magic in The Ugly Stepsister 2025, Because trust me, the director's touch is all over this film in the best way possible. From the very first scene, you can feel the director setting a playful, slightly rebellious tone. This is no ordinary fairy tale, and they make sure you know it. The mood swings effortlessly between sharp comedy and genuine emotional depth, and that balance comes straight from the director's clear vision. They know when to push the humor with fast-paced banter, exaggerated reactions, and clever visual gags, but they also know exactly when to slow everything down and let the characters breathe, giving the audience those unexpected heartfelt moments that hit you right in the chest. Stylistically, the director isn't afraid to have fun. There are brilliant, creative flourishes throughout the film, like how flashbacks aren't just your typical muted memory scenes, but are instead presented with a dreamy, storybook-like filter that makes you feel like you're flipping through a mischievous chapter of Clarabelle's past. The camera work adds so much to the storytelling, too. We get these tight, intimate close-ups when Clarabelle is wrestling with her feelings, making us feel like we're right inside her head. Then, when the adventure kicks in, the camera pulls back with sweeping, dramatic shots that turn the royal palace and magical kingdom into sprawling, cinematic playgrounds. The pacing is another area where the director really shines. The movie zips along with a sense of energy that keeps you hooked, never dragging through slow patches or unnecessary filler. The quick, witty dialogue scenes are cut with a snappy rhythm that keeps the laughs coming, while the bigger, more intense moments, like when Clarabelle faces off against magical dangers or when the truth about her stepmother's schemes comes to light, are given the weight and space they need to land with real impact. And let's talk about the director's narrative choices, because they're part of what makes this movie feel fresh. Instead of sticking to a simple good versus evil fairy tale arc, the director digs into themes of identity, self-worth, and breaking out of the roles society hands you. They weave these ideas into the story so naturally that you're thinking about them even as you're laughing at the next outrageous twist or cheering on the characters in the big finale. The whole film feels like it's been shaped by a director who loves this world and wants you to love it too. Someone who understands that the best fairy tales aren't just about magic and romance, but about messy, funny, complicated people finding their own way. Cinematography. Let's talk about the look of the Ugly Stepsister 2025. Because, oh wow, the cinematography here is doing some seriously heavy lifting to make this fairy tale world come alive. Right from the start, you notice the camera isn't just there to show you what's happening. It's part of the storytelling, adding layers of meaning and mood to every scene. The opening shots of Clarabelle's world are full of tight, slightly claustrophobic angles, almost as if the camera is squeezing in on her, making us feel the weight of the labels and expectations pressing down on her. But when she steps out of that world and into the larger adventure, the shots widen, opening up into these gorgeous, sweeping frames that make the kingdom feel expansive, magical, and full of possibility. The lighting is another key player here. There's this beautiful contrast between the cold, polished glow of the royal court, all gleaming chandeliers and frosted mirrors, and the warmer, earthier tones of Clarabelle's private world, whether it's her humble bedroom or the quiet corners of the castle she sneaks through. This lighting shift does more than just make things pretty. It subtly tells you about the characters' inner lives, about where they feel most like themselves. During the flashbacks, the cinematographer leans into a dreamy, almost golden haze that makes childhood memories feel both soft and bittersweet, pulling you into Clarabelle's past in a way that's both visually enchanting and emotionally loaded. And oh, the standout moments. There's a jaw-dropping scene where Clarabelle stands at the edge of the enchanted forest, the moonlight cutting through misty trees, and you can almost feel the magic crackling in the air. The framing here is perfect. Clarabelle is tiny against the looming forest, but the way the camera lingers on her determined expression tells you she's ready to face whatever's coming. Another unforgettable visual moment is the chaotic royal ball sequence, where the camera spins and weaves through dancers, chandeliers, and magical mishaps, creating this dizzying, exhilarating sense of tension and fun. The cinematography here isn't just about making things look good, although it absolutely does. It's about pulling you into the moment, making you feel the characters' excitement, their fear, their triumph. The atmosphere throughout the film owes so much to the visual choices. Whether it's the tension of a hushed confrontation lit only by flickering candles, or the breathtaking beauty of a magical sunrise as Clarabelle takes a brave step forward. Every frame feels carefully crafted to draw you deeper into this reimagined fairy tale world, making sure your eyes are just as engaged as your heart and your mind. It's a visual feast that never stops surprising you. Editing and pacing. Alright, let's break down the editing and pacing in The Ugly Stepsister 2025. Because this is where the movie's rhythm really shines and keeps you hooked from scene one to the final frame. Right off the bat, you can feel the editor's hand shaping the flow of the film. Every cut feels intentional, whether it's zipping you through a rapid-fire comedy exchange or lingering just long enough on an emotional beat to let it fully sink in. The transitions between scenes are especially fun. Instead of flat, obvious cuts, the movie often uses clever visual or sound bridges. For example, the clatter of Clarabelle slamming a door might smoothly shift into the clinking of royal silverware at the next scene's fancy dinner, keeping the energy continuous and adding a little extra wit to the transitions. The pacing overall is brisk and lively, which matches the movie's playful tone. You never feel like you're stuck too long in one place. Even during the more emotional or reflective moments, the film keeps things moving just enough to hold your attention without undercutting the depth of what's happening. When the adventure kicks up, the editing sharpens, action sequences have a crisp, dynamic snap to them, cutting quickly but never so fast you lose track of what's going on. There's this fantastic rhythm in the way the film balances big, busy set pieces, like a royal ball spiraling into magical chaos, with quieter, character-focused moments, like Clarabelle and Ella sharing an overdue heart-to-heart, and the editor makes sure you feel the pulse of both without one overwhelming the other. There are even moments where the pacing deliberately slows down, but here's the fun part. It's not boring slow, it's tension-building slow. Think of the scenes where Clarabelle sneaks through the castle at night, or when she's trying to outwit her stepmother. The film holds the shots just a little longer, lets the silences stretch just a bit, and you're leaning forward in your seat, waiting to see what'll happen next. This change in rhythm keeps you engaged because it gives the emotional and suspenseful beats real weight, while still delivering plenty of momentum when the story needs to charge ahead. What's really impressive is how the editing shapes the emotional experience of the movie. By knowing when to speed up, when to pause, and when to jump between storylines, the film keeps you emotionally connected throughout. You're not just watching events unfold, you're feeling them in real time, caught up in the rise and fall of tension, humor, and heart. The editor's touch ensures the story doesn't just march from point A to point B. It dances, twists, and surprises you along the way, making for a thoroughly entertaining ride. Soundtrack and score. Let's talk about the soundtrack and score of The Ugly Stepsister 2025, because wow, the music in this film is practically its own character. From the first notes over the opening credits, you can feel the soundtrack setting the stage. There's this playful, slightly mischievous tune that lets you know right away this isn't your typical sweet and sparkly fairy tale. The composer really understands the heart of the story and uses music to dial up both the humor and the emotion in clever, surprising ways. Every time Clarabelle struts onto the screen with her sarcastic attitude, there's this fun little recurring musical motif, like a quirky dance of flutes and strings that perfectly matches her mix of confidence and chaos. When the big dramatic moments hit, like when Clarabelle uncovers the truth behind her family's tangled past, or when she takes her first brave steps toward being her own hero, the score rises to the occasion beautifully. Swelling orchestral themes wrap around these emotional beats, amplifying the stakes without ever drowning them in melodrama. What's really cool is how the music doesn't just blast emotion at you. It's carefully woven into the fabric of the scenes, guiding your feelings without telling you exactly what to feel. One of the real standouts is how the film uses silence. There are a few key scenes where the music drops away entirely, like during a tense confrontation between Clarabelle and her stepmother, or when Clarabelle is left alone with her thoughts. And that absence of sound makes the tension feel sharper, the loneliness more real. It's a smart, subtle move that gives the emotional moments extra punch. And let's not forget the big musical set pieces. The royal ball sequence, for example, explodes with energy thanks to an infectious, whimsical score that layers classical strings with a bit of modern flair, creating this magical, toe-tapping atmosphere that pulls you right into the chaos and fun. The final moments of the film also deliver a musical payoff, bringing back the main theme in a triumphant, full orchestra version that feels earned and satisfying, like the soundtrack has been on its own journey alongside the characters. The way the score blends into the story is seamless. It's never distracting, never trying too hard to grab your attention. Instead, it works like an invisible emotional guide, lifting the comedy, deepening the drama, and making the whole fairy tale world feel richer and more alive. By the time the credits roll, you'll probably catch yourself humming one of those catchy motifs without even realizing it, which is the ultimate sign of a soundtrack that really sticks. Themes and messages. The Ugly Stepsister 2025 might seem on the surface like a fun fairy tale remix, but peel back the sparkly layers and you'll find a movie packed with some surprisingly sharp and thoughtful themes. At its core, this story dives deep into ideas of identity and self-worth, especially in the face of other people's expectations. Clarabelle isn't just battling her stepmother or rivaling Cinderella for the spotlight. She's grappling with the crushing weight of the ugly stepsister label the world has slapped on her. The film explores what it means to push back against the roles you've been handed and ask, who do I really want to be? This theme of reclaiming your narrative runs throughout, giving Clarabelle's journey emotional heft and making it resonate beyond just the surface level fun. Another major theme the movie digs into is the complexity of family, and not just the fairy tale kind. We're talking about the messy, bittersweet reality of sibling rivalry, unspoken jealousy, and buried hurt. Clarabelle's relationship with Ella is layered and raw, showing how two people can love and resent each other all at once. The movie doesn't shy away from the fact that family bonds can be both a source of pain and a path to healing. Watching these sisters navigate their tangled emotions gives the story real depth, reminding audiences that no one's family is as simple as it looks from the outside. The film also flirts with themes of beauty, power, and perception, how society defines who gets to be the heroine and who gets cast as the sidekick or the villain. There's a sly commentary running through the story about how appearances shape opportunity, especially for women, and the script pokes at these tropes with a wink, inviting the audience to reconsider the old fairy tale rules. Clarabelle's arc becomes a subtle but powerful rejection of the idea that beauty equals worth, and her triumph feels like a win not just for her, but for anyone who's ever felt overlooked or underestimated. One of the more thought-provoking threads running through the movie is the tension between fate and choice. Sure, the world of the story is drenched in magic and destiny, but the real magic here is Clarabelle's determination to break free of the script. The film asks whether we're trapped by the roles we're born into or if we can rewrite our own stories, and it makes that question feel fresh and meaningful without hitting you over the head with it. The result is a fairy tale that lingers in your mind, not just because of the glitter and the gowns, but because it leaves you wondering about your own power to shape the ending of your personal story. Visual effects and CGI. Let's dive into the visual effects and CGI of The Ugly Stepsister 2025, because wow, this movie really knows how to sprinkle in the magic without making everything look like a video game cutscene. First off, the CGI here doesn't just exist for spectacle. It's woven into the fabric of the world in a way that feels smooth and purposeful. Whether it's the shimmering transformation of a ragged gown into a jaw-dropping ball dress, the flicker of enchanted mirrors whispering secrets, or the swirling portals conjured by mischievous fairy godmothers, the digital effects are designed to pull you deeper into the fairy tale rather than yank you out with flashy gimmicks. There's this delicate balance where the effects heighten the wonder and fantasy, but they never overpower the emotional core of the story. One of the coolest parts is how the movie mixes practical effects with CGI. When Clarabelle's carriage barrels through the moonlit forest, you can feel the weight of the real-world set pieces, the crunch of gravel, the snap of branches, but then the forest comes alive with glowing eyes and shifting shadows, courtesy of some slick CGI. It's a seamless blend, making the magical elements feel grounded rather than floaty or artificial. You never get the sense that the actors are just flailing in front of a green screen. The digital effects feel like a natural extension of the physical world they're inhabiting. The magical creatures, too, are a highlight. There's a snarky talking raven sidekick who's brought to life with such detailed animation, you forget it's not a real bird delivering those razor-sharp one-liners. And the big climactic set piece, Without spoiling too much, delivers some breathtaking visuals, from crackling spell battles to massive enchanted constructs stomping through the castle grounds. Yet even at its biggest, the CGI stays focused on character and emotion. The effects are there to amplify the stakes, not drown them in spectacle. What's especially fun is the movie's playful visual style. It's not going for gritty realism. It leans into the heightened, slightly exaggerated look of a fairy tale, using CGI to stretch the rules of reality just enough to make everything feel larger than life. The colors pop, the magic shimmers, and the overall design invites you to believe in a world where anything is possible. And let's not overlook the smart use of restraint. There are moments when the filmmakers hold back on the effects, letting the practical costumes, sets, and performances take center stage. This careful balance makes the magical moments shine even brighter when they do arrive. Overall, the visual effects and CGI in The Ugly Stepsister work like a well-cast spell. They enhance the world, deepen the immersion, and deliver plenty of wow without ever turning into hollow spectacle. You'll find yourself swept along by the magic, fully believing in every sparkling transformation and enchanted showdown, because the effects feel like a natural, integrated part of the storytelling rather than something slapped on top for extra flash. Set design and locations. Let's step into the enchanting world of The Ugly Stepsister 2025, where the set design and locations do more than just serve as pretty backdrops. They practically breathe life into the story. Every corner of this film is drenched in meticulous detail, creating a fairy tale universe that feels both fantastical and strangely grounded. The castle, for example, isn't just a glittering palace plucked from a storybook. It's a layered, lived-in space, with grand ballrooms that gleam under chandeliers and tucked away serving corridors where secrets lurk in the shadows. You can feel the contrast between the polished perfection of royal life and the rougher, cozier corners where Clarabelle and her family scheme and squabble. The village streets, on the other hand, are bursting with color and texture. Cobblestone alleys, bustling market stalls, ivy-draped taverns where whispers of palace gossip swirl through the air. These settings aren't just painted scenery. They actively deepen the atmosphere, anchoring the characters' journeys in a world that feels tactile and rich with history. You can almost smell the bread baking in the background or hear the clatter of hooves on the stone roads. Props play a huge role in adding charm, too. Clarabelle's cluttered bedroom, crammed with half-finished sewing projects, old letters, and mismatched trinkets, tells you everything about her personality before she even says a word. The enchanted objects, like the mirror that doesn't just reflect, but talks back with sass, or the magical locket that flickers with tiny sparks, are designed with such care that they feel like true artifacts of this world, not just convenient plot devices. The production design also knows how to shift tone with the story. As Clarabelle moves from the cramped, dusty corners of her home into the gleaming halls of the royal court, the shift in scale and luxury mirrors her own emotional journey. The sets evolve alongside the characters, reflecting moments of tension, triumph, and transformation. And when the story takes a darker turn, the once lush gardens twist into thorny mazes, the candlelit chambers cast long, eerie shadows. The entire world reshapes itself to match the mood, pulling the audience deeper into the stakes of the moment. What makes it all sing is how the locations never feel random. Every space, from the smallest cottage to the grandest ballroom, feels chosen for a reason, adding layers to the plot, the themes, and the characters. You're not just watching Clarabelle's journey unfold. You're walking the same winding paths, standing under the same moonlit archways, and getting swept up in the magic and messiness of her world. It's the kind of immersive, detailed design that makes you want to linger in every scene, just to soak in the little touches you might have missed. Dialogue and script. The dialogue in The Ugly Stepsister 2025 is a refreshing blend of sharp wit, heartfelt moments, and just the right amount of snark, creating a script that feels both modern and timeless. There's a real rhythm to the way characters speak. It's not just about advancing the plot, but giving us glimpses into who these people are at their core. Clarabelle, for instance, isn't afraid to throw out a biting remark or two, especially when she's feeling frustrated by the world's expectations of her. But those zingers, they aren't just for laughs. Every sarcastic quip has a layer of defense, a way of showing how deeply she's been wounded by the label of the ugly stepsister. It's these little lines that reveal the complexity of her character, and it's what makes her journey from outcast to heroine so satisfying to follow. The script also knows how to hit those emotional beats with just the right touch. There's a moment between Clarabelle and her stepmother that's raw and tense, and the dialogue crackles with underlying bitterness, a history of hurt that's only hinted at but speaks volumes. Lines like, "You were never meant to be the star, Clarabelle," carry so much weight, not because they're shouted, but because they're so carefully understated. These moments ground the story in real, relatable emotions, making Clarabelle's eventual rise feel all the more powerful. Then, of course, there's the delicious humor. This is a movie that isn't afraid to be fun, and the script delivers some wonderfully sharp one-liners and witty exchanges, particularly between Clarabelle and her ever-sarcastic talking raven sidekick. Their banter is a highlight, snarky, quick, and full of heart. You can tell the writers had a blast crafting these moments, and they add a layer of charm to the film. Even the royal ball, usually the setting for saccharine dialogue in most fairy tales, gets turned on its head with moments of dry humor and social commentary. It's this cleverness in the script that allows the film to walk the fine line between lighthearted fun and deeper, more serious themes without losing its playful edge. There are lines in this film that stick with you long after the credits roll. When Clarabelle, in a moment of epiphany, says, "I don't need a crown to stand tall. It's simple, but it's powerful." It's a declaration of self-worth, a rejection of the idea that you need to be chosen by fate or society to be valuable. That's the kind of impactful writing that doesn't just define the character. It resonates with anyone who's ever felt like an underdog. The dialogue doesn't just move the plot along. It defines the world and its characters. From sharp wit to poignant silence, the script knows exactly when to make you laugh and when to hit you right in the feels. Whether it's a bitter remark or a moment of unexpected vulnerability, every line in The Ugly Stepsister serves a purpose, and that makes it stand out as one of the more engaging and memorable scripts in recent memory. Genre execution. Now, let's talk about how The Ugly Stepsister, 2025, navigates the world of fairy tale fantasy, because it's not just another spin on the classic Cinderella story. While it does play by some of the genre's familiar rules, there's a ball, a glass slipper, sort of, and an underdog heroine. It also flips the script in a way that feels both fresh and daring. This isn't your typical fairy tale where the beauty contest is the central conflict. Instead, it's about the messy, real emotions that come with being overlooked, underestimated, and boxed into a role you never asked for. The film leans into its genre's conventions, but then it expertly turns them on their head to deliver something that feels surprisingly modern and relatable. The character of Clarabelle is a perfect example of how the film subverts genre expectations. Usually, in fairy tales, the ugly stepsister is just a villainous afterthought, right? But here, she's the star. Instead of being a two-dimensional foil for Cinderella, Clarabelle is given depth, complexity, and a story that's both hilarious and heartbreaking. This isn't a rags to riches tale where the protagonist is just trying to win love and beauty. It's a journey of self-acceptance, where the real reward is learning to define yourself on your own terms. The narrative pulls away from the traditional idea that the heroine's value is based on how she looks or who loves her, and instead, it centers on inner strength and personal growth. It's a refreshing take that feels both true to the genre and wildly inventive at the same time. The film does an excellent job balancing the various elements that make up its genre: magic, humor, romance, and drama, without letting one overshadow the others. You get the enchantment of magic spells and flying carriages, but you also get grounded, human moments where the characters deal with real emotional struggles. The film knows when to turn up the humor with quick-witted banter between Clarabelle and her sarcastic sidekick, and when to pull back into something more poignant, like the strained conversations with her family. It doesn't overload on action or suspense, but it has just enough of both to keep you on your toes. When magic is unleashed, it's impactful, and when the emotional stakes rise, they feel earned, not forced. The humor, in particular, stands out because it doesn't feel like a throwaway. While some fairy tales rely on slapstick or exaggerated comedic moments, The Ugly Stepsister mixes its humor with cleverness and relatability. There are sharp one-liners, self-aware commentary on the fairy tale tropes, and moments of light-hearted absurdity that never feel out of place. It's like the movie is in on the joke, allowing the audience to enjoy the familiar beats of the genre, while also nudging them to laugh at how ridiculous some of these traditional elements are when you really stop to think about them. It's clear the film has a deep love for its fairy tale roots, but it's not afraid to push boundaries and explore the parts of the genre that are often glossed over. The ugly, uncomfortable bits that make a character's journey truly worthwhile. Whether it's breaking down the notion of beauty, addressing the complex dynamics of family, or allowing Clarabelle to take center stage instead of Cinderella, the film shows that a well-executed fairy tale doesn't have to adhere strictly to formula. It can twist and turn, surprise you, and ultimately feel like it's telling you something new. Social and cultural commentary. The Ugly Stepsister 2025 isn't just a whimsical fairy tale romp. It's a film that quietly, and sometimes not so quietly, wades into some surprisingly relevant social and cultural waters. At first glance, it may seem like just another fantastical story about family dynamics and magical transformations. But scratch beneath the surface and you'll see that it's also an exploration of themes like beauty standards, societal expectations, and self-worth. The film uses its fairy tale setting as a backdrop for a broader commentary on how people, especially women, are often defined by how they look, who they know, and how they fit into the narrow mold society gives them. Clarabelle, the titular ugly stepsister, is the perfect lens through which to explore this. She's immediately cast into the other category, labeled as unattractive and unworthy before she even gets a chance to define herself. This reflects the real-world pressures many people, particularly women, face when it comes to body image and societal expectations. But rather than succumbing to these external definitions, Clarabelle's journey is about breaking free from these stereotypes. She actively rejects the idea that her value is based on her appearance or the approval of others. The film doesn't just touch on beauty standards in a superficial way. It digs deeper into how these standards shape our interactions and our sense of self. There's also a clear commentary on family dynamics and generational expectations. The relationship between Clarabelle and her stepmother is filled with layers of unspoken expectations. Clarabelle is expected to fit into a particular role, much like how many people in real life are expected to live up to the roles their families or society have assigned them. The film speaks to those who feel like they don't belong in the narrative that's been written for them. It asks the audience to consider how those expectations can be limiting and how breaking free from them isn't just a personal victory, it's a radical act. Beyond the personal, the film also taps into broader cultural conversations about power dynamics. The royal family, who seem to have everything, are depicted as deeply flawed. Their power is built on a foundation of tradition, appearance, and status. The idea that someone from humble origins and someone typically ignored, like Clarabelle, can rise above their societal position challenges the idea that one's worth is tied to wealth, title, or privilege. The contrast between the haves and the have-nots is woven into the story, making subtle comments about privilege, power, and the ways in which society values certain people over others. The inclusion of the sarcastic talking raven sidekick also brings in a bit of social satire. The raven, who is as disillusioned with the royal world as Clarabelle, often provides commentary on the absurdity of societal norms, poking fun at the ideals of fame, beauty, and class that are so often idolized. His humor is cutting, but it's also deeply insightful, offering viewers a mirror to reflect on their own biases and assumptions. One of the most fascinating things about how the film handles these issues is its ability to do so without feeling preachy or forced. The themes of beauty, self-worth, and defying societal expectations are naturally woven into the narrative, never overtly pointed out or shoved down your throat. The film's fantastical elements serve as a lens through which these serious issues can be explored in a way that's both entertaining and thought-provoking. Whether it's Clarabelle's personal struggles with identity or the broader dynamics of power and appearance in her world, the movie invites viewers to think critically about how they navigate their own lives in a world that often pushes people to fit into predefined boxes. In a sense, The Ugly Stepsister is both a fun escape into a magical realm and a quietly rebellious call to challenge the cultural narratives that shape our lives. It's a film that acknowledges the messiness of societal expectations while offering an antidote in the form of a character who refuses to be defined by anyone's standards but her own. The film's social and cultural commentary is subtle but potent, making it not just a fairy tale for the ages, but a conversation starter about what it means to truly be seen. Audience engagement. The Ugly Stepsister 2025 isn't just a movie that you watch and forget. It's the kind of film that sticks with you long after the credits roll. It taps into something universal, the desire to be seen, valued, and accepted for who we really are. And it's that emotional resonance that draws you in from the very first moment, making you laugh, cry, and reflect on your own experiences. There are moments in the film that hit hard emotionally, and not in the usual ways you might expect from a fairy tale. Sure, there are romantic moments and magical transformations, but it's the quieter, more personal beats that truly resonate. Clarabelle struggles to define herself beyond the shadow of her stepsister, and her own family's expectations are painfully relatable. Who hasn't felt like they didn't fit into a prescribed role? Who hasn't felt judged or unseen because of how they look or where they come from? These raw, human moments are what make the film feel deeply personal, even if you're not an ugly stepsister yourself. It's easy to empathize with Clarabelle as she fights against the world's narrow perceptions of her, and those moments where she starts to claim her own worth, they're truly triumphant. And then, of course, there's the humor. The film knows when to hit you with a lighthearted punchline or a witty one-liner that leaves the audience laughing in unison. Clarabelle's dry humor, often aimed at the absurdity of the fairy tale world around her, provides comic relief in moments that could have otherwise felt too heavy. The talking raven sidekick, ever sarcastic and sardonic, steals a lot of those moments, serving as the voice of reason and the comic foil to Clarabelle's frustrations. His jokes are sharp and clever, but they also come with a healthy dose of wisdom, making you chuckle while also realizing how spot on his observations are about the world. The excitement ramps up during key plot twists, where you might find yourself on the edge of your seat, not knowing what will happen next. It's not just about the romance or the magic. It's the way Clarabelle rises to the challenge, embracing her own potential in a world that's told her she doesn't belong. There's a palpable sense of anticipation, especially in the moments where she takes risks or defies the very expectations that have been placed on her for so long. Those moments are bound to elicit some genuine excitement as you find yourself rooting for her every step of the way. But perhaps the most surprising part is the way the film invites deep reflection. It's not a mindless escapist tale. It's the kind of film that makes you pause and think about your own journey. How many times have we been conditioned to think a certain way about ourselves, about others? How often do we judge people based on external factors, only to realize later that we were wrong? The film raises these questions without ever getting preachy or overt. It's all wrapped up in the magic of a fairy tale, but underneath, there's a message about identity, self-worth, and breaking free from societal constraints. It's one of those films that makes you want to talk about it afterward, share your thoughts, and dive deeper into the layers that you might not have caught the first time around. The characters are so well crafted, the themes so rich, that you'll find yourself reflecting on them long after the film ends. And let's be real, there are plenty of moments that beg for repeat viewings, whether it's for the humor, the unexpected twists, or the emotional payoff that comes from seeing Clarabelle's journey unfold. There's a richness to the film that ensures it'll continue to resonate with audiences long after they've experienced it for the first time. The Ugly Stepsister doesn't just entertain, it invites a conversation. It's the kind of movie that makes you laugh and cry, yes, but it also makes you think. And in that sense, it succeeds in creating a lasting emotional impact. Whether it's a quiet reflection on self-worth or a full-on emotional release during a pivotal scene, the film delivers moments that stick with you. It's the kind of movie you'll want to talk about with your friends afterward, share theories with, and probably even rewatch to catch the nuances you missed the first time around. Comparisons to similar films. When you think of fairy tales, the first films that come to mind might be the classic Disney princess stories, or perhaps the darker, more modern takes on tales like Cinderella or Snow White. But The Ugly Stepsister, 2025, is not just another retelling of a well-worn story. In fact, it manages to carve out its own identity by flipping familiar conventions on their head while still maintaining that magical fairy tale essence. It doesn't just follow the formula. It plays with it, twists it, and adds layers of complexity that make it stand out from the crowd. For starters, the premise of The Ugly Stepsister is immediately refreshing. We're used to the ugly stepsister character being a one-dimensional antagonist, the villain who's either jealous or bitter, often depicted as the character who doesn't quite measure up to the heroic sister. But Clarabelle, the protagonist here, is an inversion of that trope. She's not just the ugly or evil stepsister. She's the one we root for, the one whose story is worthy of being told. That twist on expectations alone makes it feel fresh and distinct. The film doesn't give us the typical villain we're used to seeing in fairy tales. It gives us a layered, complex character who challenges the narrative and offers a new perspective on familiar themes. Looking at similar films, The Ugly Stepsister has a bit in common with other recent fairy tale-inspired films like Cinderella, 2015, and Maleficent, 2014, which also reimagined classic stories from a different character's perspective. But while Maleficent and Cinderella focused on the backstory of characters who were once villains or supporting figures, this film goes a step further by not only reinterpreting the ugly stepsister, but also addressing contemporary themes like body image, societal expectations, and personal growth. While Cinderella might center on the traditional rags to riches story, or Maleficent on the blurred lines of good versus evil, The Ugly Stepsister digs deeper into the emotional transformation of its protagonist, making the themes of identity and self-worth much more pronounced. It also shares a lot of DNA with films like Shrek or Enchanted, where humor and heart are blended to create something that appeals to both children and adults. Much like those films, The Ugly Stepsister has a sharp sense of humor that plays with the conventions of fairy tales, while also offering a more meaningful message. But unlike Shrek, which satirizes fairy tale tropes with a more cynical edge, this film balances its satire with a sincere, heartfelt core. The humor comes from the absurdity of the world that Clarabelle inhabits, not from mocking the genre itself, allowing the film to maintain its fairy tale charm while still being self-aware. In terms of tone, The Ugly Stepsister shares some elements with films like Bridget Jones's Diary or The Princess Diaries, where the awkwardness and internal struggles of a character serve as the emotional heart of the story. While those films might not have the magical elements of a fairy tale, they share the same core themes of self-empowerment and identity, which The Ugly Stepsister takes to a more fantastical level. It's like Bridget Jones meets Cinderella with a sprinkle of The Princess Diaries' sense of transformation, and it all comes together in a unique blend of humor, heart, and magical realism. Comparing it to films in the same genre, The Ugly Stepsister is a breath of fresh air. It doesn't rest on the laurels of traditional fairy tale formula. It's not simply a better version of what's come before, but rather a whole new take on the genre. It's a mix of the familiar, the magical transformations, the love story, the fight against injustice, with new ideas and themes that make it stand out. It doesn't just rely on the magic of the fairy tale. It uses that magic to tell a story that's more grounded, more human, and ultimately more empowering. Where other films might lean on spectacle or classic tropes, The Ugly Stepsister grounds its fairy tale magic in real-world struggles. The self-worth journey of Clarabelle is one that feels relevant in today's world, making it feel less like a nostalgic trip and more like a timely, contemporary story wrapped in a magical package. The film doesn't just add to the pile of fairy tale reboots. It shifts the conversation, making the once-forgotten stepsister into a fully realized character who invites us to rethink what makes a story worth telling. In the grand scope of films like Cinderella or Maleficent, The Ugly Stepsister feels like a much-needed shift in perspective, and it does what all great fairy tales should do. It makes us rethink how we view the world and, more importantly, how we view ourselves. Symbolism and metaphors. If you look closely enough, The Ugly Stepsister 2025 is teeming with visual metaphors and hidden meanings woven into the fabric of the story in ways that add extra layers of depth to the narrative. It's not just a tale about magic, transformation, and the classic fairy tale tropes. It's about something much more profound, something that speaks to the struggles and growth we all go through in life. The film uses symbolism to elevate its themes, making its message more resonant and impactful, even on a subconscious level. So let's dive into these symbolic elements and see how they tie into the overall story. One of the most obvious symbols in the film is the mirror. Not just a reflective surface, but a motif that takes on a much deeper meaning as Clarabelle's journey unfolds. The mirror reflects not only her external appearance, but also her internal struggles, her self-doubt, and her journey towards self-acceptance. At first, the mirror shows only the surface, reflecting the image society has imposed on her. The ugly stepsister, the one who doesn't belong. But as the film progresses, the mirror takes on a different role. It becomes a tool for self-reflection, where Clarabelle looks past the surface and begins to see herself in a new light. Her true essence, her strengths, her worth. The mirror isn't just for checking beauty or appearance. It becomes a metaphor for the self-awareness and personal growth that Clarabelle goes through as she learns to embrace who she truly is, beyond the roles others have cast for her. Then there's the recurring symbol of the garden. This isn't just a setting for romantic scenes or whimsical moments. The garden is a place where Clarabelle connects with nature and, symbolically, her own growth. It represents a space where things are cultivated, both physically and emotionally. As she spends more time in the garden, she starts to cultivate her own sense of self-worth, nurturing it as one would a delicate flower. There's even a scene where she plants seeds of hope, which eventually bloom into vibrant, colorful flowers, representing her blossoming into her own person, free from the expectations of others. It's a quiet, subtle metaphor for how growth takes time, patience, and care, and how even the smallest change can lead to something beautiful. The clock is another striking metaphor that keeps popping up in key moments of the film. Time, of course, is a central theme in many fairy tales, with the idea that the magic will expire at midnight. But in The Ugly Stepsister, the clock represents much more than just a countdown to a ball. It symbolizes the pressure that Clarabelle feels in trying to live up to an ideal of perfection. The idea that time is running out, that she's not allowed to have a happy ending unless she fits a particular mold. It's also about the ticking away of time in her life. The moments she feels are wasted, trying to conform to what society expects her to be, instead of allowing herself the freedom to be who she really is. When the clock breaks or stops ticking at key moments, it symbolizes Clarabelle's breaking free from these self-imposed limitations and the realization that she has all the time she needs to figure out who she is. The use of color is also something that enhances the themes of the film, and there's no better example than the transformation of Clarabelle's wardrobe throughout the movie. In the beginning, her clothes are dull and muted, reflecting her internal state of self-doubt and her perception of herself as being insignificant. But as she grows emotionally and starts to shed the expectations of others, her clothing, much like her character, becomes more vibrant and colorful. It's a visual metaphor for how her inner self is coming into full bloom, expressing who she truly is without restraint or fear. Her wardrobe shift from bland to bold mirrors her personal journey from being overlooked to standing tall in her own skin. There's also a very interesting play on the concept of ugliness throughout the film. The title itself is a metaphor, but the film takes this further by turning the concept on its head. The ugly stepsister is never truly ugly in the traditional sense. Instead, the film uses her so-called ugliness as a metaphor for how society often devalues people based on superficial factors, things like appearance, class, or status. Clarabelle's physical appearance is irrelevant to her journey. What truly makes her ugly in society's eyes is the fact that she doesn't fit into the narrow mold that people expect her to. This is one of the most powerful metaphors in the film, as it forces the audience to question the very nature of beauty and how we define it. Clarabelle's transformation is less about becoming physically beautiful and more about realizing her worth as a person, a shift that's about embracing individuality, rejecting societal standards, and celebrating what makes each of us unique. The magical raven sidekick is also rich with symbolism. Initially, he seems like a comic relief, offering sarcastic commentary and playing the I've seen it all wise character. But as the story progresses, the raven takes on a deeper, more significant role. He represents Clarabelle's inner voice, the one that challenges her self-doubt and urges her to take risks. His presence reminds her that there is always a choice, a path that she can take that leads toward empowerment, self-acceptance, and ultimately, freedom. The raven's playful yet wise nature symbolizes the balance between humor and wisdom that Clarabelle needs to unlock in order to face her fears and step into her true potential. Ultimately, The Ugly Stepsister is layered with metaphors that elevate its message and themes, making it more than just a fairy tale. These symbols are not just aesthetic choices. They deepen the storytelling, making it richer and more complex, while still remaining accessible. They remind us that the journey to self-acceptance, personal growth, and empowerment is not a straight line, but a process of transformation that is both painful and beautiful. From the garden to the clock to the wardrobe, every element serves as a visual reminder that Clarabelle's story is not just about breaking out of the ugly label. It's about discovering or nurturing context and owning her own story in a world 2025 that's constantly trying isn't just a standalone fairy tale. It's a clever reimagining of the classic Cinderella narrative, giving us a fresh perspective by focusing on a character who's typically sidelined in the original stories. This twist opens up a whole new world of possibilities, blending contemporary storytelling with age-old folklore. But what really makes it stand out is how it takes an established fairy tale tradition and builds upon it to create something entirely its own. When it comes to franchise context, The Ugly Stepsister is part of a broader trend of modernizing classic tales, which is something we've seen a lot in recent years. These reboots or alternative perspectives aren't just retelling the same old stories. They're reinterpreting them in a way that reflects contemporary values and issues. By flipping the script, the film takes what was once a simple tale of beauty and love and turns it into a complex narrative about self-worth, identity, and breaking free from societal expectations. What sets this film apart is that it doesn't just rely on the Cinderella story framework. It digs deeper into the complexities of relationships, especially family dynamics, and how often people are forced into certain roles based on appearances or perceived value. It's as though the film is looking at Cinderella from a new angle, inviting the audience to reconsider the concept of beauty, ugliness, and worth. In the context of other films in this modern fairy tale reimagining genre, The Ugly Stepsister fits perfectly alongside films like Maleficent or Cruella, which gave us a peek into the villains of the classic stories. But what makes this film unique is that it's focused on a character who's often overlooked. It's not about turning a villain into a misunderstood hero, but rather taking a character who is typically dismissed as ugly or mean and showing her story, allowing us to see how her perceptions of herself and the world around her shape her fate. On the other hand, The Ugly Stepsister also taps into a broader historical context of storytelling. Fairy tales have been passed down through generations, and they often reflect the values and fears of the societies that created them. In this sense, the film is aware of its cultural origins, but seeks to update those ideas for a modern audience. It's also a commentary on how, throughout history, women have been boxed into roles based on appearance and societal expectations. For example, the story of Cinderella has always been rooted in a kind of moral lesson about inner beauty, but it's often been told from the perspective of the good characters. By shifting the focus to The Ugly Stepsister, the film challenges traditional ideas about beauty and goodness. It questions why someone who doesn't fit the mold is considered ugly or less deserving of love, making it a relevant commentary on societal norms today. It plays with historical tropes, like the idea of the ugly stepsister as the antagonist, and flips them on their head, giving us a more nuanced understanding of what it means to be good or bad. When it comes to historical accuracy, the film isn't tied to real events in the traditional sense, but it does lean into the history of storytelling itself. The Ugly Stepsister explores how fairy tales have evolved over time, reflecting changes in society's views on gender, beauty, and self-worth. By playing with these familiar elements, the film taps into a cultural history of storytelling that's rooted in moral lessons, but also deeply embedded in the way cultures pass down wisdom through myths and legends. As part of this historical context, the film uses the familiar trappings of a fairy tale, magic, transformation, and grand events like the ball, but adds a layer of introspection. It challenges the audience to think about the happily ever after and what it really means, moving beyond the typical tropes of romantic love and physical beauty. Instead, it focuses on the internal transformation of the character, which is more of a modern take on fairy tale storytelling than the classics that might have defined the genre decades ago. In essence, The Ugly Stepsister is a modern take on a timeless tale, one that respects the classic structure of fairy tales while adding depth and complexity. It doesn't just fit into a specific franchise, but contributes to the ongoing conversation about how fairy tales can evolve to meet the needs of a contemporary audience. It's not just a retelling of an old story. It's an exploration of how these stories are told, who gets to tell them, and what lessons we can learn from them today. This film stands as a unique addition to the genre, pushing the boundaries of what fairy tales can be, while still paying homage to their roots. Budget and box office. Let's talk numbers, because when it comes to movies, the budget and box office are often the final verdict on whether a film sinks or swims. Now, The Ugly Stepsister 2025 had a decent budget, though not astronomical compared to some of the big budget blockbusters we've seen over the years. It wasn't an Avengers level spend, but it wasn't some small indie project either. With a sizable budget, the producers clearly wanted to make sure the film had the kind of quality that would make it stand out. They didn't cut corners on things like production design, costumes, or special effects, which is clear when you see the intricate set pieces and the way the world comes to life. The film's budget seemed well aligned with its visual ambitions. The settings, costumes, and even the CGI, when it pops up for some magical elements, were top-notch, helping to immerse viewers in this fresh take on a classic tale. From the luxurious ballrooms to the grimy backstreets, the production design gave the story a beautiful texture, showing that the money was well spent on building a rich visual world. This kind of investment is essential for a fairy tale, where the look and feel of the world around the characters are just as important as the story itself. Now, when it comes to box office performance, The Ugly Stepsister definitely had a bit of a mixed reception. While it didn't break records, it didn't exactly flop either. It found a solid niche audience, particularly among viewers who love reimagined fairy tales, or those who are looking for something that flips the script on traditional narratives. However, it didn't quite achieve the breakout success that some other fairy tale reboots or Disney remakes have seen in recent years. So, what went right and what went wrong? Well, the film had an engaging story and unique characters, but it also faced stiff competition at the box office, with many other big-name films releasing around the same time. It's easy to get lost in the shuffle when you're up against franchise giants. Marketing played a big part in the film's performance as well. The promotional material, trailers, and social media buzz created enough curiosity to bring in an audience, but it didn't have the same kind of mass appeal that draws people into theaters for huge opening weekends. The marketing focused heavily on the novelty of the Ugly Stepsister perspective, which certainly intrigued a lot of people, but maybe not enough to make it a must-see event. Audience reception, though, was a bit of a mixed bag. Some viewers loved the fresh take on the classic story, appreciating the depth and complexity added to a character that's typically relegated to the sidelines. For these people, the film's exploration of self-worth, identity, and family dynamics was a breath of fresh air in the fairy tale genre. Others, however, were expecting more of the traditional fairy tale magic and felt the film didn't deliver that in the way they had hoped. This could have had an impact on repeat viewings, a key factor when it comes to box office longevity. In the end, while The Ugly Stepsister didn't hit any major box office milestones, it did carve out its own space in the crowded market. It found an audience who appreciated its take on the classic story, but the financial success was more moderate compared to what some were hoping for. It's a reminder that a film's success isn't always just about the budget or the size of the marketing campaign. Sometimes it's about striking the right chord with the audience and finding that perfect balance between creativity and expectations. Where to watch? If you're looking to experience The Ugly Stepsister 2025 and get lost in its reimagined fairy tale world, you've got a few options, and the best choice depends on how you want to experience the film. For those who want to fully immerse themselves in the world of magic, mystery, and twists on classic tales, catching The Ugly Stepsister in theaters is the way to go. The visuals, the set designs, and the whole atmosphere are really something to behold on the big screen. The lush backdrops, the magic, the dramatic moments, it all comes together in a way that feels grand and cinematic when viewed in a theater setting. Plus, there's nothing like sharing that communal energy with an audience when the twists land or the emotional moments hit just right. If it's showing in a theater near you, it's totally worth it to experience the movie in all its glory with the sound cranked up and the visuals filling your screen. However, if you're a fan of the comfort of your own home, who isn't, right? The film is also available on digital rental platforms. Renting it digitally means you can experience all the magic of the story from your couch. You get the option to pause for popcorn breaks, rewatch your favorite moments, and catch every detail without the hustle and bustle of a theater crowd. Streaming services have also picked up the Ugly Stepsister, so you can dive into it whenever you feel like it. Whether you're all about cozying up on the couch or having a movie marathon weekend, streaming gives you that flexibility, and in today's world, there's nothing better than that. Of course, if you're someone who loves to watch films as soon as they drop, some streaming platforms may offer the movie right when it releases, meaning you can start watching within hours of its premiere. That means no waiting in lines at the theater, no worrying about getting a ticket. Just hit play and let the magic unfold. So, whether you choose the immersive theater experience, the cozy home theater vibe, or the flexibility of